Tonight I want to talk to you about something that is both uncomfortable and essential: how to restore broken character. Write this down. This is important. We are going to explore a topic that few leaders are prepared for, because from the very beginning, leadership training focuses on success. We are trained to win, to perform, to be efficient, to rise to the top, but rarely are we trained on how to fail effectively. And that is precisely the challenge. Failure is inevitable in life and leadership. The question is not if you will fail, but how you will respond when you do. Understanding the process of restoration after a fracture in your character is not easy. Leadership restoration is one of the most difficult paths a person can navigate, because unlike a sports injury that heals in time, the fracture of character involves trust, integrity, reputation, and relationships. It touches everything about your influence and credibility. Many leaders have never learned to fail properly, to understand the process of recovery, and to rebuild the foundation that failure has shaken. That is why only a very small percentage, perhaps 2% of leaders, truly recover and survive the aftermath of a character failure. Let me illustrate this with a current example. Though it may be uncomfortable, I was watching television before bed last night, and the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation ran a story for over 30 minutes about the mayor of Toronto, who was filmed using cocaine. They also reported additional incidents, including interactions with prostitutes. The council in Toronto grilled him for nearly 4 hours. During that time, he refused to step down, stating firmly, "No matter what you do, I am not stepping down." Even when the council voted 41-2 for him to resign, he insisted he would not. They asked him, "Have you purchased drugs in the last 30 days? He admitted, "Yes." They asked, "Do you still hold zero tolerance on drugs and guns?" He answered, "Yes." Then they asked, "Does this apply to you?" He said, "Yes." At this point, it was clear to anyone observing that he had moved from ignorance to foolishness, and some might even say to defiance. This is an example of what it means to be disqualified as a leader. Write that down. Disqualified. A leader can be disqualified by their own actions, regardless of past achievements. Disqualification is not always immediate in public perception, but it is very real in the moral and ethical ledger of leadership. When a leader refuses to submit to accountability, when they ignore the consequences of their actions, they demonstrate the fragility of character and the importance of restoration. So, what do you do when you lose it all? When your integrity is fractured, when your decisions have undermined the very trust people placed in you? This is where the principle of falling up comes into play. Most people know how to fall down. They know failure intimately, but very few understand how to rise after failure. How do you reclaim your character, restore your trustworthiness, and regain influence? That is the purpose of this discussion. We are going to focus on what I call the secret to leaders' failure and restoration. This applies not only to politicians or executives, but to pastors, ministers, parents, and anyone in a position of responsibility. Leadership is universal. The principles of restoration are universal. Whether you are a corporate leader, a public official, a housewife, or a mentor to children, the process is the same. Let's establish some fundamentals first. The foundation of leadership is character. Not power, not influence, not skill, character. Your ability to lead is inseparable from your moral and ethical integrity. Character is the most important component of leadership. Talent, intelligence, and strategy can all fail if character is compromised. Character is the greatest protection of leadership. No entourage, no title, no privilege can protect a leader whose character is broken. Your reputation is only as strong as the consistency of your values under pressure. Talents and gifts are only as safe as your character. Think of character as a container. Your gifts, skills, and achievements are inside this container. If the container cracks, the contents are lost. We have spoken about law and ethics before, and I want to remind you, the foundation of ethics is law. Law is the source of culture. Law is the source of morality. Law informs conscience, unspoken or written. Law is constantly communicating standards. Character is produced and tested by these standards. Your values, your moral compass, and your ability to withstand pressure all depend on your relationship with law. Character is manifested when your values, principles, and ethics are tested. The true test of character is not in comfort or praise. It is under pressure. It is when your appetites are challenged, when fame tempts you, when power seduces you. What you do in these moments defines you. You may claim integrity, but it is proven only by the decisions you make when under scrutiny, temptation, or crisis. So tonight we are beginning a journey, understanding failure, understanding restoration, and understanding how to rise stronger. This is not hypothetical, it is practical, actionable, and essential. Leadership is a privilege, but it carries profound responsibility. Protecting your character, even when no one is watching, is the only way to ensure that your leadership endures. Now that we understand the foundation of leadership, character, we need to dive deeper into one of the most critical concepts in leadership, the trust account. This is not metaphorical, it is real in its consequences. Every leader has a trust account, and it is the single most important currency of leadership. Without it, you cannot lead effectively, no matter your talent, intelligence, or resources. Let me illustrate. A leader can spend 50 years building credibility and influence. Every action, every relationship, every demonstration of character adds deposits, but a single act of deceit, corruption, or moral failure can erase all of that in moments. This is why leadership is fragile and why every decision, public or private, matters. Protecting your trust account is not optional, it is essential. Consider again the example of the Toronto mayor. He spent years building his career, his relationships, and his influence. Then, in a series of public revelations, cocaine use, sexual indiscretions, refusal to step down, his entire trust account was withdrawn. All the bridges he had built were suddenly meaningless in the eyes of his constituents. His actions violated the fundamental agreement between a leader and the people. Trust is earned and must never be taken for granted. Understand this clearly. Failure in leadership is not the worst thing that can happen. The real danger is failing to respond appropriately to that failure. Everyone experiences disappointment, mistakes, embarrassment, or even shame. That is human. But what defines a leader is not the failure itself, it is how you handle the aftermath. Failure closes the trust account. When you violate trust, the people who once followed you will hesitate, question, or even withdraw their support. Trust is not something you can demand, buy, or plead for. It is given freely by those who observe your character consistently over time. And once violated, it is not easily restored. Restoration is a deliberate, often slow process, and it requires more than mere apology. Think of trust as an equation. Tested over time, trust. This means trust is built through consistent testing, observation, and proven integrity. People need to see you withstand challenges, resist temptations, honor your word, and maintain composure under pressure. If they do, trust grows. If not, the account is withdrawn. Here is a key point. People may forgive you immediately, but they do not automatically restore your trust account. Forgiveness is an emotional response. Restoration of trust is practical. It requires time, consistent behavior, and demonstrated change. You cannot shortcut it. Leaders must also remember that their entourage, their advisors, or bodyguards cannot protect the trust account. Protection comes only from your own consistent behavior, both in public and in private. You cannot delegate character or integrity. It is yours alone to maintain. This brings us to a critical question. What actions today might be secretly withdrawing from your trust account? Every ethical compromise, every dishonest decision, every hidden moral failure erodes trust silently. Leadership requires vigilance, not just in what people see, but in what no one else sees. Protect your account constantly. Let me summarize the key points about the trust account. Trust is the currency of leadership. Without it, you cannot lead effectively. Trust is built over time by consistent testing, observation, and integrity. Trust is lost instantly through moral or ethical failure. Forgiveness does not equal restoration. Restoration requires deliberate, consistent effort. Only you can protect your trust account. No entourage, position, or power can do it for you. Understanding this is critical because as leaders, we will face situations that test every fiber of our integrity. Your choices in those moments will determine whether your account grows or collapses. The story of the Toronto mayor is not just about scandal. It is a lesson on the fragility of trust and the necessity of restoration when character fails. Now that we understand the fragility and critical importance of the trust account, the next question is inevitable. What do you do when you fail? Every leader will encounter failure. It is not a matter of if, but when. What separates leaders who recover from those who collapse is their response. Restoration is a deliberate, multi-step process. It is not automatic. It is not a matter of saying, "I'm sorry," or hoping people will forget. Restoration of trust requires action, humility, and time. Let me break down the essential steps every leader must take to restore their account. Admit your need for help. The first and most difficult step is admission. You cannot restore trust if you do not first acknowledge that you need help. Many leaders fail because pride prevents them from admitting vulnerability. They refuse counseling, mentorship, or accountability. You cannot rebuild a love. Admitting that you need guidance is not weakness, it is the foundation of restoration. Consider the Toronto mayor again. When confronted, he denied needing help. He refused to acknowledge his addiction, his misjudgments, or his moral failures. By doing so, he blocked the very first step of restoration. No one can help you unless you admit the need. This is a hard truth, but it is vital. Restoration begins with humility. 2. Confess your violation of trust. The second step is confession. You must openly acknowledge the specific ways in which you violated trust. Avoid vague statements or general apologies. People need to see that you understand the impact of your actions. I remember an experience early in my career. I made a serious accounting mistake that affected the students I was responsible for. I could have tried to cover it up or blame circumstances. Instead, I confessed directly to my supervisor. That confession allowed us to correct the mistake and rebuild credibility. If I had hidden it, the trust lost would have been impossible to recover. Confession is not just about words, it is about taking responsibility for the breach without excuses, without deflection. Only then can the process of rebuilding begin. 3. Remove yourself from positions of influence temporarily. The third step is stepping back. Restoration cannot happen while you remain in the same position of power where the failure occurred. You are blocking the path for both your recovery and the progress of others. Leaders who try to stay in the spotlight immediately after a major failure usually compound the damage. Going out of the public eye, stepping down from positions, and creating space for reflection and correction is necessary. It is humbling, but it demonstrates to others that you take accountability seriously. It also protects the organization, your family, and the people you lead from further harm. 4. Seek mentorship and accountability. Restoration is not a solitary journey. You need people who will hold you accountable, who will call out weaknesses, and who will guide you toward consistent ethical behavior. These are not enablers, they are truth tellers. Friends or advisors who shield you from consequences are actually harming you. True mentors challenge you, correct you, and push you toward integrity. 5. Demonstrate consistent change over time. Finally, trust is rebuilt only through sustained, observable change. Apologies and confessions are the beginning, but consistency under pressure restores credibility. People must see you resist temptations, honor commitments, and demonstrate character day after day. The time it takes to rebuild trust is often longer than the time it took to destroy it. Patience and persistence are essential. Remember this clearly. Restoration is a marathon, not a sprint. You cannot shortcut it with charm, charisma, or temporary gestures. Every action matters, every decision matters, every interaction matters. Your character is the ultimate test, and consistent behavior proves your restoration. Once you've admitted your need for help, confessed your violations, stepped back and sought accountability, the next critical focus is values and principles. Restoration is not simply about avoiding mistakes, it's about building a foundation so strong that failure becomes a rare exception rather than a recurring pattern. Leadership is not built on skill alone, charisma, or intelligence. These are important, yes, but they are secondary. The foundation of leadership is character, and character is defined by the values you hold and the principles you follow. Without these, restoration will be shallow and temporary. Values are the true container of your talents and gifts. Think about it. A leader can have immense talent, knowledge, or charisma, but if the container, their character, is cracked, all of their abilities can spill out and be lost. That is why so many gifted leaders collapse under pressure. Skills without values are like water in a broken bucket. It cannot be carried forward. Here are some of the core values every leader must cultivate and protect, especially during the process of restoration. Faithfulness. Be consistent in your commitments, even when no one is watching. Self-control. Resist temptations that could undermine your integrity. Steadiness. Maintain composure and reliability under pressure. Integrity toward those you serve. Protect your followers and act in their best interests. Responsible communication. Speak truthfully and thoughtfully, avoiding deception. Personal integrity. Keep promises and live according to your principles. Maturity. Respond with wisdom and patience rather than impulsive emotion. Humility. Accept that you are not infallible and can learn from mistakes. Each of these values is a pillar in the restoration of leadership. They cannot be faked. Restoration is proven when your behavior consistently aligns with these principles under scrutiny. Values shape culture and attract accountability. Remember this, your values are magnetic. They will attract like-minded people and repel those who do not share your principles. This is why building a circle of mentors and advisors with high ethical standards is critical. If your circle tolerates compromise or corruption, restoration will be sabotaged from within. The distinction between forgiveness and restoration also becomes critical here. Followers may forgive a leader quickly, but forgiveness alone does not rebuild the trust account. Trust is rebuilt over time through observable principled behavior. The process of restoration is longer than the process of failure. Values are the foundation that allow this rebuilding to endure. In short, if you want to restore your leadership, start with values. Identify them, embrace them, live them, and let them guide every decision. Your restoration is not about returning to your old status. It is about emerging stronger, wiser, and more trustworthy than before. Once we understand the foundation of values, the next step in leadership restoration is protecting the trust account. Trust is the currency of leadership. Without it, no amount of talent, intelligence, or charisma can make you a successful leader. Think of trust as a bank account. Every time your followers observe your integrity, honesty, and consistency, they make a deposit into your trust account. Over years, you can accumulate a significant balance, but beware, a single violation of your values, a moment of compromised integrity, can wipe out decades of trust in seconds. Consider this. A leader who has spent 30 years building credibility can destroy it all with one scandal, one poor choice, or one unprincipled act. The speed at which trust is lost is always faster than the speed at which it is earned. Restoration is painstaking because rebuilding the account takes persistent demonstration of character and values over time. Here are some key principles for protecting and rebuilding the trust account. Consistency under pressure. Your character is tested during challenges, temptations, and crises. True restoration begins when you prove that your principles hold firm under scrutiny. Transparency and accountability. Admit mistakes early. Seek counsel and allow trusted advisors to guide you. Hiding failures only accelerates trust depletion. Observable actions, not just words. Followers do not restore trust because you apologize or express remorse. They restore trust when they see consistent ethical behavior over time. Guard against self-deception. Leaders often rationalize poor choices. The moment you stop excusing yourself, you begin protecting your account. Trust requires testing over time. There is an equation you must remember. Tested behavior, time make trust. In other words, trust is not earned by promises, it is earned by observed integrity and reliability across challenges and opportunities. Followers watch how you behave when tempted, pressured, or under scrutiny. They measure whether your actions align with your stated values. A restored leader demonstrates faithfulness to values in both private and public life. They do not compartmentalize integrity. They do not allow private failures to undermine public credibility. Protection of the trust account must be constant, conscious, and proactive. Critical point. Leaders cannot delegate the protection of trust. Bodyguards, entourages, or advisors cannot safeguard your credibility. Only your consistent choices and ethical conduct can do that. Leaders who fail to protect the trust account often fall into the trap of relying on forgiveness as a shortcut. Remember, forgiveness does not equal restoration. Forgiveness might release you from judgment in the eyes of some, but the trust account must be rebuilt through demonstrated, consistent behavior. Finally, understand this. The trust account is fragile but not irreversible. Even after significant failures, with humility, accountability, and commitment to values, a leader can rebuild credibility and re-earn trust, though the process will be longer than the initial building. Now that we understand the importance of the trust account, let's talk about something few leaders are trained to handle: failing successfully. Leadership failure is inevitable at some point, but the real difference between leaders who survive and those who collapse lies in how they respond to failure. Step 1. Admission of your need for help. The first and often hardest step is admitting that you need help. Pride is a leader's greatest enemy. Leaders often refuse help because they believe asking for it shows weakness, but true strength begins with acknowledgement of your vulnerability. Look at leaders who fail and never recover. They refuse to admit they are in trouble. They deny reality, ignore counsel, and attempt to carry on as if nothing happened. This is the path to permanent failure. Restoration begins when you take the first humble step, admitting you cannot fix everything alone. Step 2. Confession of violations. After admitting your need for help, you must confess the violations that cause the loss of trust. This is not just saying "I'm sorry," it is a transparent acknowledgement of the specific ways your actions broke the account of trust. Confession serves multiple purposes. It clears the air of denial and deception. It allows trusted advisors and mentors to guide you through repair. It creates a starting point for measured, intentional restoration. A confession must be complete and honest. Half-truths or excuses do not restore trust. They prolong suspicion and delay the process. Remember, the followers or stakeholders may forgive you emotionally, but forgiveness alone does not rebuild trust. The trust account requires consistent corrective action over time. Step 3, removal from leadership position, if necessary. Sometimes restoration requires stepping back. You cannot continue to lead effectively if the trust account is depleted. Trying to maintain position without restored trust only blocks the growth of others and prevents your own rehabilitation. Think of it as a car broken down on the highway. You do not leave it there because it causes accidents. You move it to a safe place, repair it, and then get back on the road. Similarly, a leader must step aside temporarily or permanently to repair integrity and character. Step 4, accountability and mentorship. No one restores their trust account alone. Leaders need a network of mentors, advisors, and peers who will hold them accountable. These are people who will speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable. They will challenge your rationalizations. They will observe your behavior and guide your corrective actions. They will ensure that your steps toward restoration are not just superficial gestures. A key point: friends protect you when you succeed, but they challenge you when you fail. True accountability exposes your weaknesses so that you can correct them. Step 5, demonstrated character over time. Restoration is not instant. Followers, colleagues, and stakeholders need to see consistent ethical behavior over time. This includes adherence to values even when no one is watching, transparent decision-making, faithfulness to responsibilities and promises, humility in interactions, and acceptance of feedback. Remember, the time to rebuild trust is always longer than the time it took to break it. Patience, persistence, and daily commitment to values are non-negotiable. By following these steps: admission, confession, temporary removal if needed, accountability, and consistent demonstration of character, you begin the long journey of falling up, failing in a way that ultimately strengthens you as a leader. Now that we've covered admission, confession, accountability, and temporary withdrawal, we move into the crucial next stage: rebuilding trust and restoring leadership. This is where many leaders fail. They assume that saying "I'm sorry" or briefly stepping back is enough. It is not. Restoration is a deliberate, disciplined process. Understand that restoration takes time. Trust is the currency of leadership. Once spent carelessly, it is not regained overnight. A leader may have taken 20, 30, or 40 years to build credibility, but a single failure can wipe it out in seconds. Restoration requires the same meticulous, consistent actions that originally earned trust, but now with even greater intentionality. Think of a bank account. Every ethical decision, every act of integrity is a deposit. Every act of dishonesty, irresponsibility, or broken promise is a withdrawal. You cannot skip the deposits. There is no shortcut. Followers need to see repeated proof of your character before trust is restored. 2, live transparently. After a failure, nothing can rebuild your account faster than radical transparency. Hiding, manipulating, or explaining away your actions destroys credibility further. Instead, be open about past mistakes and ongoing corrective actions. Invite scrutiny from mentors, peers, and trusted followers. Let your decisions be visible, accountable, and verifiable. Transparency demonstrates that you have nothing to hide, which is a core pillar of trust restoration. Reaffirm values through action. Words are cheap. Actions speak louder than speeches. Every decision you make should reflect your restored values. This includes faithfulness to your commitments, consistency in behavior under pressure, choosing principle over popularity, prioritizing integrity over convenience. By repeating these behaviors daily, you show that you are no longer the leader who failed. You are a leader who has learned, grown, and recommitted. 4, focus on service, not image. Restoration is not about winning back fame, approval, or applause. It is about serving those who depend on your leadership faithfully. Leadership is not a performance, it is a responsibility. Serve with humility. Put others' needs above your reputation. Avoid self-promotion during the restoration process. Leaders who rebuild trust focus externally on service, not internally on reputation. This humility is what convinces others that your transformation is genuine. 5, consistency under pressure. The ultimate test of restored leadership is behavior under pressure. Will you maintain values when no one is watching? Will you remain steadfast in ethical decisions when tempted to cut corners? Will you protect your trust account even when circumstances are difficult? Character is tested in private, not just in public. The world may forgive a visible failure, but they watch for private consistency before fully restoring confidence. 6, engage in mentorship and accountability networks. Even after initial restoration, never lead alone. Surround yourself with people who speak truth unflinchingly, hold you accountable for actions, decisions, and words, protect you from repeating the same mistakes. A wise leader builds a circle of correction, people who will challenge, guide, and restore balance to your leadership decisions. 7. Commit to lifelong learning. True restoration requires self-reflection and learning from failure. Ask yourself regularly, what patterns of behavior led to this failure? How can I prevent similar mistakes in the future? Am I living in alignment with my values consistently? Learning and growth are non-negotiable. A leader who ignores lessons from failure risks repeating them and losing trust permanently. Now we come to the final section, how to fully restore your character and leadership after failure. This is where theory meets action, the roadmap that transforms mistakes into long-term credibility and renewed influence. Take full responsibility. Restoration begins with complete ownership of your actions. No excuses, no blaming others, no minimizing the impact. Followers and colleagues need to see that you are accountable for the consequences of your choices. Admit publicly where appropriate. Accept the outcomes fully. Demonstrate humility in every interaction. 2. Engage in deep reflection. Ask yourself the hard question, why did this failure happen? What values were compromised? How can I ensure this never occurs again? Reflection should be honest and unflinching. Avoid rationalizations. Truth is the foundation of transformation. 3. Restore relationships step by step. Trust is personal. If your failure affected others, family, colleagues, followers, you must rebuild those relationships patiently. Apologize sincerely. Take concrete actions to show change. Allow time for others to observe your renewed commitment. Remember, forgiveness may be immediate, but restored trust takes consistent, visible effort over time. 4. Recommit to core values daily. Identify the values that define your leadership: integrity, humility, faithfulness, accountability, and service. Each day, recommit to living them. Use them as your guiding principles in every decision. Prioritize values over convenience, popularity, or short-term gains. Teach others these values by example. 5. Build an accountability network. You cannot restore leadership alone. Surround yourself with mentors who challenge you, peers who speak truth, not flattery, trusted advisors who hold you to high standards. Accountability protects you from repeating mistakes and reinforces your restored character. 6. Demonstrate consistency over time. Restoration is a marathon, not a sprint. Followers will watch every decision under pressure to determine if your character is real. Maintain ethical behavior privately and publicly. Show restraint, patience, and honesty in every situation. Continue rebuilding trust, even when progress seems slow. 7. Serve without expectation of recognition. True restoration is service-focused, not image-focused. Your work now is about contributing value, helping others, and demonstrating character, not seeking praise. Help others quietly, consistently, and faithfully. Focus on making a difference rather than regaining popularity. Let your restored character speak louder than words. 8. Keep learning and growing. Finally, the restored leader is a lifelong learner. Reflect, adapt, and improve continuously. Learn from past failures to prevent future ones. Stay humble and teachable. Share lessons learned with others to inspire integrity and accountability. Conclusion. Leaders fail, every leader at some point, but falling does not define you. How you respond defines your legacy. By admitting your need for help, confessing violations of trust, engaging in accountability and reflection, practicing transparency and service, rebuilding relationships and trust consistently, recommitting to core values daily, you can rise stronger than before. Leadership restoration is not easy, but it is possible. The world does not need perfect leaders. It needs leaders who have failed, learned, and returned with integrity, humility, and courage. Protect your character, protect your trust account, and serve with unwavering commitment. Failure is not the end. Restoration is the true measure of a leader.